So the point being, because the more serious crimes, he was acquitted on the more serious crimes, that opens the window that the Trump administration now feels it wouldn't be as bad to, there wouldn't be as much backlash to pardon him?
It's part of it, but it's...
They weren't just two famous names moving in the same circles. For years, Donald Trump and Sean Diddy Combs were fixtures at the same velvet rope gatherings, backslapping each other at charity galas, sharing tables at Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, and nodding across candlelit corners at the kind of parties where the bubbly was endless and the cameras always seemed to catch them laughing. Trump praised Diddy's hustle, Diddy admired Trump's showmanship, and the public saw them as two power players with a mutual understanding of how to own a room. That easy camaraderie made their eventual rupture all the more explosive.
I was very friendly with him. I got along with him great, and seemed like a nice guy. I didn't know him well. But when I ran for office, he was very hostile.
He said some not so nice things about you, sir.
Yeah, and it's hard, you know, like you, we're human beings.
Right.
And we don't like to have things cloud our judgment, right? But when you knew someone and you were fine, and then you run for office and he made some terrible statements. So
now the warmth is gone. In its place, a public snub so sharp it's making headlines across every political and entertainment beat. Trump isn't just saying he won't help his one-time acquaintance. He's openly leaning toward the harshest sentence possible for the music mogul, whose conviction on transportation for pay charges already has him staring down 2 decades behind bars. The president's words on NEWSMAX dripped with that unmistakable blend of personal grievance and political calculation. It makes it more difficult to do, he said, recalling Diddy's past barbs about getting him out of office. In other words, a friendship has become a score to settle, and Trump seems more than willing to play executioner. For those who remember the public banter between these two, the reversal feels like something out of a political soap opera. Just a few years ago, the Bad Boy Records founder was still name-checked in interviews, still part of the glamorous overlap between hip-hop royalty and Trump's reality star-turned-president persona. But when Diddy turned his platform into a megaphone for Trump's critics, the air cooled fast. By 2020, Diddy was saying white men like Trump need to be banished, and if Trump heard those words, and there's no doubt he did, he's been storing them away like ammo.
And then what's the stuff that's happening to Wendy Williams? Do you think this is all connection to? Of course!
Behind the scenes, there's an even murkier twist to the story. Multiple sources in the industry claim that Trump's hardline stance isn't just payback for political insults. It's part of a so-called revenge pact involving Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie. Cassie's explosive allegations of physical abuse and coercion set off the chain reaction that led to federal charges, and insiders whisper that Trump, seeing the headlines, seized the moment publicly. He could wrap himself in the banner of standing up for victims. Privately, it looked like an opportunity to cripple a foe who had crossed him. Was this sudden moral high ground a genuine change of heart, or simply a strategic play to knock a rival off the board? This speculation doesn't stop there. Trump's refusal to extend a pardon has been linked by some to a much darker calculus: the Epstein factor. Rumors of Diddy's attendance at the financier's infamous gatherings have never been substantiated, but the parallels between the two scandals, both dripping with whispered tales of leverage, illicit parties, and celebrity guests, have conspiracy forums working overtime. Trump, meanwhile, has been under his own microscope for years over supposed links to Epstein. By distancing himself now, and by pushing Diddy into the harsh glare of a maximum sentence, he could be sending a message. Whatever anyone thinks they know about those parties, Diddy is on his own.
If the
in
judge,
October, right.
In October 3rd, if the judge denies bail, then Trump is going to make a decision possibly immediately thereafter.
Most likely, the judge is going to, based on previous decisions, it feels like the judge is going to deny.
It's hard to miss the irony. This is the same Donald Trump who has repeatedly pardoned political allies, overturned convictions, and railed against what he calls a corrupt justice system. Yet here he is, faced with a former friend whose sins in court are far less than the public rumors swirling around him. And instead of mercy, we're watching what looks suspiciously like the ultimate act of political revenge. It's almost theatrical. The one-time host of The Apprentice, taking the role of judge and jury against a man who once stood next to him in tailored suits and designer shades. Adding fuel to the fire is the timing. Just days before Trump doubled down on keeping Diddy locked away, the Justice Department abruptly shut the door on further Epstein file releases, claiming there was no incriminating client list. That didn't stop conspiracy chatter from pointing out the overlap. Both cases involving high-profile men accused of orchestrating elaborate freak-off-style gatherings, both ending with less than the public expected, and both leaving behind a mess of unanswered questions. The difference now is that Diddy still has a sentencing date ahead, and Trump is in the position to tip the scales either way.
Trump pardoning Diddy will create another Epstein for him. It would be a nightmare. And last and certainly not least, the GOP is already struggling with female voters, and they're not all lefties. There are young conservative women who aren't in love with Trump or MAGA. There are. And this will not help. It's very clear. We all saw the videotape of him beating the hell out of Cassandra.
We also can't ignore the drama surrounding the prosecutors. Maureen Comey, daughter of Trump's most famous FBI nemesis, was abruptly fired after working on both the Diddy and Epstein cases. Her departure was followed by a statement warning about the abuse of power and the dangers of fear shaping justice. Whether coincidence or calculated move, the optics were gasoline on an already raging bonfire of theories about who's pulling strings and why. And when the president himself starts talking about releasing everything on Epstein while refusing to help Diddy, the lines between justice, revenge, and reputation management blur beyond recognition. For Trump, the stakes here are more than personal. They're legacy level. Supporters of his hardball approach see it as proof he won't be swayed by old friendships if the law says otherwise. Critics, though, point to the selective nature of his mercy, asking why some allies walk free while others, like Diddy, get the cold shoulder. Is this about principle? Or about settling scores in the most public way possible? And for Diddy, the betrayal cuts both ways. The legal battle that could cost him his freedom is now tangled with a political feud that shows no signs of cooling.
They once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
Which leaves us with the question nobody seems ready to answer. Was Trump ever truly Diddy's friend? Or was this moment always lurking in the background, inevitable as soon as their ambitions no longer aligned? The images of them laughing together in better days now feel like stills from a setup, a prelude to the kind of shocking twist no one saw coming. The clock is ticking toward October, and the room where Diddy will hear his fate is getting smaller by the day. The echoes between Diddy's fall and Jeffrey Epstein's implosion are impossible to ignore. Both men built empires from nothing, climbing into the rarefied air of billionaire social circles where presidents, royalty, and Hollywood royalty mingled over private dinners and whispered invitations. Both cultivated an image of untouchable influence, surrounding themselves with the most glamorous guests and the most impenetrable security. And both, in the end, were dragged into federal courtrooms under a cloud of accusations that turned their celebrity into evidence. The fact that Diddy's conviction landed within days of Trump's abrupt decision to close the book on the Epstein files has set the rumor mill on fire. Was it a coincidence or a well-timed diversion?
Look at Diddy, for instance. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at him. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at, he has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on.
Some in the entertainment world quietly wonder if Diddy's legal spectacle was a convenient distraction from the administration's pivot on Epstein. We've all seen the public outrage over the Justice Department's memo insisting there was no incriminating client list. That announcement came like a cold slap to those who had been promised transparency, and while media outlets dissected every detail of Diddy's verdict, the missing minute of Epstein's cell footage was shrugged off with a casual explanation about outdated cameras. The overlap is unsettling. Two high-profile men accused of orchestrating elaborate gatherings that catered to the whims of the elite, both ending their day in court with less accountability than many expected, and both leaving behind unanswered questions. Layered into this timeline is the firing of Maureen Comey. And that's where the story takes on an even darker tone. She wasn't just any prosecutor. She was on the inside of both cases, navigating the murkiest corners of the Epstein investigation while also pressing charges in the Diddy trial. Then, without public explanation, she's shown the door. A day later, she sends a message to her former colleagues warning that fear is the tool of a tyrant and urging them to resist letting that fear dictate their work. It doesn't take a conspiracy theorist to ask the obvious. What did she see that made her expendable?
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if you listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
We know her last name has been a sore spot for Trump since he dismissed her father from the FBI. We also know this White House has been methodical in replacing prosecutors tied to investigations the president dislikes. Combine that with the sensitivity of the Epstein files and the still active civil cases against Diddy, and the optics are radioactive. If Comey uncovered threads connecting the two worlds, overlapping guest lists, shared associates, financial trails, her removal could have been less about politics and more about prevention. Prevention of what, though? The answer to that question is the kind of thing that keeps people up at night. For months, political insiders have been whispering about what they call the pardon list, an informal mental roster of high-profile figures whose legal troubles Trump could dangle in front of the media whenever he needed to shift the national conversation. On the surface, his musings about possible clemency for Diddy or Ghislaine Maxwell seemed erratic, even impulsive. But those who tracked his media tactics insist it was far from random. The mere suggestion that such controversial names might be spared was enough to ignite public outrage, keeping commentators, pundits, and online sleuths locked in debates while other stories quietly slid off the front page.
And I'm gonna tell you why 50 is literally is a diabolical genius. And he's
In this theory, the pardon chatter was never meant to result in actual pardons. It was a lure, a controlled fire designed to flare up just long enough to dominate headlines, then fade away without consequences. Each time Trump floated the idea, it was like tossing a match into a room full of gasoline fumes, watching the explosion of speculation that followed. The names on that list weren't chosen for their innocence or guilt, but for their ability to command public attention, ensuring that the real topics Trump wanted buried stayed out of view. The most provocative angle is the timing. Pardon rumors for Maxwell surged just as Attorney General Pam Bondi was walking back earlier promises about releasing the Epstein files. The brief moment when Trump appeared to weigh helping Diddy came in the same week that critics were demanding answers about the missing minute in Epstein's cell footage. The alignment raises the uncomfortable possibility that these headline-grabbing pardon teases weren't coincidence at all, but part of a coordinated distraction campaign using the public's fascination with celebrity scandal to shield the administration from more dangerous inquiries.
Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people for sure on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very, very powerful political figures and entertainers, business people. So do you really believe that Jeffrey Epstein himself? And of course not. Of course not. Yeah.
If true, this would mean that the pardon list served not as a gesture of mercy, but as a political smokescreen. Every time a high-profile name was dangled before the cameras, the focus shifted from the structural questions about who in power might have crossed paths with Epstein to a more manageable question: would Trump or wouldn't he sign a piece of paper? It's a simple yes or no hook, easy for television panels to debate, but it draws the public's gaze away from the labyrinth of connections that a full investigation might reveal. And in the end, that's the brilliance and the danger of the strategy. By keeping the nation guessing about something as emotionally charged as a celebrity pardon, Trump may have ensured that the most volatile parts of the Epstein story never reached critical mass. If the theory holds, the pardon list wasn't just about keeping allies close or enemies nervous. It was about turning the public's attention into a chess piece, moved precisely where it needed to be at the moment he needed it most.
Interestingly, we haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic, evidence.
Theories swirl that buried somewhere in those Epstein materials or in the sealed testimony from Diddy's trial are names and stories that would scorch reputations in Hollywood, finance, and Washington. Trump's defenders insist the president is simply exercising caution, that he doesn't want to release information that could damage innocent people. His critics point out that innocent is a flexible label when the gatekeeper is the same man deciding which of his friends get a pardon and which get a cold stare. And if Diddy has any knowledge of the connections everyone is whispering about, the clock is ticking on how long he can keep it to himself. This is where the stakes jump from personal vendetta to survival. Federal sentencing guidelines are not kind, and Diddy's October date looms large. A man with nothing to lose might decide that speaking out about people, places, and events the public has only guessed at could be his last bargaining chip. If the rumors about his proximity to certain Epstein-linked parties are even half true, then his testimony could upend carefully maintained alliances and drag figures out of the shadows who have spent years avoiding subpoenas. The potential fallout wouldn't stop at the borders of the entertainment industry. It could rattle boardrooms and political war rooms alike.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking.
But speaking out comes with its own dangers. The history of the Epstein case is filled with witnesses who backed away, records that vanished, and timelines that conveniently didn't line up. Diddy has the kind of insider knowledge that would guarantee global headlines, but also the kind of enemies who don't play fair. And with Trump publicly framing him as undeserving of clemency, the safety net that powerful connections usually provide is gone. If there's a bigger chess game happening here, Diddy may be a pawn, who's finally realizing the king is willing to sacrifice him.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible.
In the end, we're left staring at a volatile mix. A president with a long memory for insults, a disgraced mogul with a history of keeping receipts, and a prosecutor who may have been pushed out before she could connect the last dots. Every piece is in motion, but the picture they're forming is still blurred. The question hanging in the air is simple but dangerous. If Diddy talks, does he bring down just his own house? Or does the blast reach Trump, the Epstein circle, and the untouchable few who have so far stayed in the shadows? Tell us what you think in the comments. And remember, sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it sets the whole stage on fire. Stay sharp, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.